Hotline Miami is a game that came out of nowhere for me. I hadn't heard about the game at all before it came out. I hadn't seen any videos, I hadn't seen screenshots or anything. I really didn't know what it was. But when it finally came out and when I downloaded the game and started playing, I was blown away. To say that I wasn't expecting what lied ahead would be an absolute understatement. If a game completely off my radar turns out to be this good and one of my Game of the Year contenders, you know it's doing something right. Hotline Miami was actually described as a top-down fuck-em-up by the developers of the game, and the game really plays like a classic action game in the vein of something like Smash TV. I personally like to think of the game as sort of a murder LSD simulator. Of course I say that in a lighthearted way, but there are some absolutely trippy and brutal moments in the game. You go around level to level, room to room, and your task is pretty simple. You pretty much have to just kill anyone and everyone in your way. To do this, you use a multitude of different weapons, and each of them are just as deadly as the next. So you'll gouge out people's eyes, you'll drill into enemies' skulls, you'll slice throats, and do other like grotesque things. If you don't like the sight of blood in your games, then Hotline Miami is definitely something that you probably don't want to play. But for everybody else, the mindless fun of going around and taking down your enemies every which way with different types of weapons and everything, it will never get old. It's just extremely fun. It's so much fun to go around these rooms just killing everyone. That's not to say the game is not without strategy, although sometimes you will want to run around the rooms trying to pick off every enemy as quickly as possible. Sometimes that'll work better, but most of the time you can't just go around willy-nilly and expect to kill everyone. You'll die and die and die again. That's just what will happen. There's no two ways about it. You're gonna die. The enemies are not slow on their trigger fingers at all. They will shoot you on sight. And that's kind of where the puzzle strategy aspects of the game come into play. There's not one straightforward path that a player takes in each level. Each person will have their own approach going through each level, and you always start out at the beginning of this beginning room, but then you'll go into other rooms at different paces and everything, so everyone's gonna play the game differently. At the beginning of each level, the player can select a mask that gives them certain abilities, such as being able to kill your enemies with faster melee strikes, or the ability to move faster. And all these abilities allow for multiple styles of play. It's just fun to go into each level and play with a different mask, and there's a whole lot of masks. There's a ton of masks to unlock, tons of cool different gameplay varieties that you can have while playing with these different masks. And along with these masks, there's other things you have to take into account. Firearms make noise, so enemies will hear you if you shoot a gun and they'll run after you. There's also a mask that actually silences your weapons, but you won't get that until later. So if you use a gun, that enemies will actually hear you and they'll try to attack you. Your environments also come into play with doors. You can actually open a door and it'll knock foes into the ground, and then from there on you can actually melee them on the ground. They're pretty much stunned at that point if you knock them on the ground. If that was enough, you also have the ability to throw your weapons, like a knife. You can throw the weapon, and this allows for long-range attacks. These can either stun or even just kill the enemy immediately by throwing the weapons. All this variety, as well as a high score combo system that the game has, allows for an extremely replayable game that's really fun to come back to again and again. As far as the story goes on Hotline Miami, it's not really a game that would come across as having a very deep story. After all, you're going around killing a shitload of people, but as the game goes on, things really start to set in, and you realize that there's more going on here than really meets the eye. Throughout the game, you don't really know why or for what reason you're going around and mercilessly killing all these people. All you know is that you just keep getting calls from some random person or random people. These calls are asking you to kill just a bunch of people at these different locations. There's no rhyme or reason for it. You just go out and do it. But as the game goes on, you'll see what effect this sort of job has on the character you're playing as and what it ultimately leads to. There's going to be a resolution. You're going to find out why these people are calling you, why people are you're killing everyone. But without going too deep into the story, let's just say it does start to get a little weird. So the presentation in Hotline Miami is absolutely superb. The 2D sprite visuals and neon colors surrounding every inch of the world look fantastic, and they work well for the type of game that Hotline Miami is. Just seeing like pixels of blood spread out of someone's neck is oddly satisfying, and I really couldn't imagine this game with any other visual style. If it was more realistic, the kills would probably become too disturbing if they weren't already for you. If it was any more cartoony, then it would lose some of the edge that it actually does have. But the entire aesthetic of the game really lends itself to the classic 80s LA style, and it is set in 80s LA, so that would make sense. And the game was obviously inspired a lot by the movie Drive. Like the aesthetic, it really reminds me of something like Drive. But going away from the actual visuals, one of the best parts about the game is the music. It is totally another beast in and of itself. It's easily one of the best soundtracks of 2012. The trippy techno electronic music throughout the experience lends itself perfectly to the game. A whole bunch of different artists worked to create this mind-bending soundtrack, and it really did pay off. I can't think of a way a soundtrack for Hotline Miami could be any better, and I think the best way to show it off is just for you to listen to a couple of the pieces of music for yourself. If you haven't noticed already by my glowing review, I'm a pretty big fan of Hotline Miami. It's such a different experience than a lot of modern retail games being released on home consoles these days. That's one of the things I really love about indie titles in general, and Hotline Miami has been able to step above the AAA titans all the way to the top of my Game of the Year list, and it's like neck and neck with games like Kid Icarus Uprising, which is also a fantastic experience. But at $10, Hotline Miami is an absolute steal and well worth your money. You should go pick it up right now if you're at all interested in the game. Do yourself a favor, play one of the best games of 2012. You could say that it's pretty killer.